Jon Snow was on a boat, rowing away, in the middle of open water with nothing protecting him. The Night King was standing right there on the dock, surrounded by a fresh army of thousands, with zero obstacles between them, and he just stood there, watched Jon go, and I think most people just accepted the showrunner's explanation and moved on. But the explanation they gave is actually the problem. After Hardhome aired in Season 5, D.B. Weiss did one of those inside-the-episode things, and he said the Night King's thought process in that moment was basically this: this kid is actually possibly a threat for me. That was the official answer. He saw a threat and walked away from it. Okay, think about that for a second. Anyone tried against him across 8 seasons of television, and we are supposed to believe that when he finally sees a man he considers dangerous, his move is to wave goodbye and leave? That's the explanation? No. Something else was happening on that dock, and to actually understand it, you cannot stay inside the show. You have to go back thousands of years into the world George R.R. Martin built in the books, because that's where this story was designed, and that's where the answer actually lives. Let's go through what happened at Hardhome first, because the exact sequence matters more than people give it credit for. Jon gets to Hardhome with Tormund, trying to convince the Worldlings to evacuate south before the dead arrive. He manages to get around 5,000 of them onto ships. Then the army of the dead shows up and everything falls apart immediately. In the middle of the chaos, Jon and a wildling warrior named Loboda end up in a burning hut trying to grab dragonglass weapons. A White Walker, one of the Night King's generals, walks in after them. Weapon. That is what White Walker weapons do. They destroy ordinary steel on him. He scrambles outside and ends up on the ground, with the Walker standing right over him about to finish it. Jon reaches for Longclaw, his Valyrian steel sword, and here is the actual moment that changes everything. He does not swing it. He raises it to block. He is just trying to stop the killing blow, fully expecting the sword to shatter in his hands the same way everything else did. It doesn't shatter. Longclaw takes the White Walker's strike and holds. Both of them stop. Jon and this creature just stare at each other for a second, both genuinely surprised. Then Jon swings, and the White Walker explodes into fragments of ice. The Night King is watching all of this from the cliffs above with his other generals. He sees that moment. The block, the pause, the kill. His reaction, according to the show's own documentation, is described as mild interest. Not alarm, not rage, interest. That word choice tells you a lot. Then Jon and the survivors get to the boats. Jon is rowing away, and instead of staying on the cliff where he had been this whole time, the Night King walks all the way down to the dock, finds a spot where Jon can clearly see him, makes direct eye contact, and then raises both arms and resurrects every single body on that beach. Thousands of fresh whites rising at once, all while staring at Jon as his boat drifts further away. That walk down to the dock is the thing people always miss. He did not need to do that. He had already won the battle. Every person who died at Hardhome was now his. He could have stayed on the cliff. But he came down to the water's edge, put himself in Jon's line of sight, and then performed his most powerful ability directly in front of him. You do not do that to someone you want dead. You do that to someone you want to see your face. Now here is where the books come in, because this is where it gets genuinely interesting. The Night King in the show is a television creation. George R.R. Martin has said outright that this character does not exist in his books, the way the show presents him. Martin put it this way, and this is close to a direct quote from a statement he made after Hardhome aired. In the books, he is a legendary figure, akin to Lan the Clever and Brandon the Builder, and no more likely to have survived to the present day than they have. So in the source material, the Night's King is not a living supernatural villain. He is ancient history, but the history itself is the important part. In A Storm of Swords, Martin's third book, Bran Stark is sitting in a ruined castle called the Night Fort, one of the original castles on the wall, and he remembers the stories old Nan used to tell the Stark children. And one of those stories is about the Night's King. The legend goes like this. There was a Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, the 13th one, who was living in the Night Fort during the Age of Heroes. This was not long after the wall was first built. One night from the top of the wall he saw a woman. Her skin was white as the moon. Her eyes were like blue stars. Her touch was cold as ice. He went after her, caught her, and the legend says he gave his soul to her. He brought her back to the Night Fort, declared himself Night's King and her his queen, and then he used dark magic to bind the other men of the Night's Watch to his will. For 13 years he ran that castle alongside this woman, doing horrific things, one of which was making human sacrifices to the White Walkers. He was only stopped when two forces came together to take him down, A king beyond the wall leading the free folk, and a king in the north from House Stark. Together they broke the Night's King, tore down everything he had built, and then wiped his name so completely from the records that thousands of years later, nobody could even say what his real name had been. That detail about the Starks is massive on its own. But then Martin takes it a step further. Old Nan, who in the books consistently knows more about the true history of the North than anyone gives her credit for, tells the Stark children that in one version of the legend, the Night's King himself was a Stark, possibly named Brandon, possibly the brother of the very king in the North who helped bring him down. Martin does not confirm this. He puts it in there as a possibility inside a legend, inside a story an old woman tells children. But he put it there on purpose. Nothing in these books is accidental. So what does any of this have to do with Jon Snow and a staring contest on a Norwegian fjord? Everything. Because of who Jon Snow actually is. By the time Hardhome happens, the show has been quietly building toward the reveal of Jon's real parentage for 4 seasons. The audience does not know it yet at that point in Season 5, but the answer has been there since Season 1. Jon Snow is not Ned Stark's bastard son. He is the son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. His mother was the last Stark daughter of her generation. His father was the heir to House Targaryen. The old bloodlines of fire and ice running together in one person. The Stark connection to the Wall and to the history of the White Walkers is deeper than any other family in Westeros. The Wall itself was built by Bran the Builder, who is the legendary founding ancestor of House Stark. Their house words, "Winter is coming," are not just a grim motto about seasonal weather. They are a warning that has been handed down for thousands of years from people who understood firsthand what winter actually meant when the long night came. And then, on the Targaryen side, you have fire. Dragon fire. The one force in the world that has always been on the opposite end of whatever the White Walkers represent. The title of Martin's entire book series is A Song of Ice and Fire. That is not a poetic description. It is a description of 2 sides of an ancient conflict, and Jon Snow is both of them. When the Night King looks at Jon from that dock, he's not just looking at a man who got lucky and found a weakness in one of his generals. He's looking at the blood of the family that destroyed the Night's King the first time around. The blood that built the Wall. The blood that carries the longest memory of what this war actually is. There is also the Valyrian steel piece, and this one gets slept on. In Martin's books, Sam Tarly spends time in the Night's Watch archives at Castle Black, digging through old records trying to find anything useful about the White Walkers. He finds a single account from the time of the Long Night that mentions the last hero killing the others with a blade of Dragonsteel. He brings this to Jon, and the two of them theorize that Dragonsteel is probably another name for Valyrian steel, the metal forged in dragonfire through ancient sorcery. But at that point in the books, it is only a theory. Nobody has tested it. The show does not set that scene up before Hardhome, but the stakes are the same. When Jon raises Longclaw and it holds, nobody in that moment knows what is about to happen. Not Jon, not the White Walker, and crucially, not the Night King watching from above. That block is not a planned move. It is a desperate man grabbing the nearest sword and finding out by accident that it works. What the Night King just watched was the rediscovery of something that was supposed to be buried forever. For however long he has been north of the Wall building his army, and based on the show's timeline, it has been thousands of years, the one material that poses a real physical threat to him, and his generals had been essentially forgotten. The knowledge was gone. The swords were scattered, rare, treated as heirlooms rather than weapons. The world had no idea. And then this one man, at this one moment, in this specific battle, proves it works again. The Night King did not throw a spear at Jon's boat. He had the arm and the accuracy to hit a dragon in flight from distance, so do not tell me a boat was too difficult. He chose not to throw it. He chose to stand there and watch Jon leave with that knowledge and that sword. Here is where it all collapses into something almost too clean. The Wall was not just a massive ice structure. It was built with ancient magic specifically designed to stop the dead from crossing. Whites could not pass through it. The Night King himself could not pass through it. That magic had held for 8,000 years, and it was the one thing standing between his army and the rest of the world. He needed it gone. To get it gone, he needed a dead dragon. Something with enough power to tear down a section of the Wall and break the magic inside it. That kind of creature does not exist in most of the world's lifetime. The last dragons died well over a century before the show's events. There was no plan that gets the Night King through the Wall without one. Then Jon Snow happened. Jon organises the Wight Hunt in Season 7. The logic is that he needs to capture a live Wight and bring it south to show Cersei that the dead are real and the war matters. He puts together a small group and goes beyond the Wall. The mission goes sideways immediately. The Night King surrounds them and cuts off their retreat. The group is stranded on a frozen lake in the middle of the dead army with no way out. Daenerys comes. She flies all 3 of her dragons beyond the wall to rescue. Jon Snow had died at Hardhome. That chain of events does not exist. Jon is the one who established the relationship with Daenerys that made her trust him enough to fly into that situation. He is the one who came up with the Wight Hunt. He is the reason those dragons were beyond the wall at all. The Night King let Jon live and then patiently waited 2 full seasons while Jon did exactly what the Night King needed him to do. Jon became king in the north. He allied with the Targaryens. He got a living dragon within reach of an ice spear. And the wall came down. The show does not say any of this directly. It just shows you the results and lets you sit with them. There is one last thing worth saying, and it brings everything back to the books. The way the Night's King in Martin's legend was defeated was through a Stark-led alliance with the Free Folk. A king in the north and a king beyond the wall putting aside 8,000 years of enmity to fight a common enemy. After they won, they erased him from history so thoroughly that his own name was lost. At Hardhome, Jon Snow, a man carrying Stark blood, is doing exactly that. He is rebuilding the same coalition that broke the Night's King before. If the Night King carries any memory of his own history, if he knows how this ended the last time, then what he is watching from those cliffs is not just a man with a useful sword. He is watching the pattern repeat itself. He is watching the same alliance form, led by the same bloodline, with the same outcome written into it if he lets it run its course. And he let it happen anyway. Maybe that was arrogance. Maybe he had already put pieces in motion that he knew Jon could not stop. Or maybe what happened at the wall, getting his dead dragon through the same man who was supposed to stop him, was so perfect that none of the old history mattered anymore. Whatever the answer is, that stare on the dock was not a threat. The Night King did not raise his arms to say, "Look how powerful I am." He raised them because he was looking at someone whose attention was worth having. Someone whose bloodline he recognized. Someone he was not done with yet. Jon Snow spent the rest of his story thinking he was the one fighting the Night King. But from the moment that boat drifted away from Hardhome, he was the one being used. Arya killed the Night King in the end. Jon Snow just delivered everything the Night King needed to get there. If you watch this whole thing and want more of this kind of breakdown, the stuff the show glossed over, the lore the books actually explain, the things hiding in plain sight, subscribe and leave a comment. Tell me which moment or mystery you want pulled apart next. There is genuinely no shortage of material. Drop it below and we will get into it.